So when we're now talking about small business, this small business can grow very, very fast. And they can go, as I say, from zero to making loads of millions. And for me, managing the supply chain of some of these brands, the challenge is that whereas with big business, yes, they give me a forecast. Sometimes they'll confirm how much they're going to buy for the next 12 months.
Welcome to Chain Reaction, the podcast for the supply chain and logistics industry. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Chain Reaction podcast. We talk about everything logistics, and today we have an amazing guest, Natalia Gandara Vilas, who is the head of supply chain in Europe for the company called HCT, which is one of the leading manufacturers and the contract manufacturers and packaging manufacturers for cosmetics and beauty products. Welcome, Natalia.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you today.
Natalia, I've looked at your LinkedIn profile, and we talked about that a little bit. It's quite interesting, your career. So you've studied logistics at London University, and pretty much all of your career has been in logistics. I love asking that questions for my guests. How come logistics appears to be quite dull to outsiders and boring, but few people find it exciting, me included. So can you tell us your story?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I do find that in the UK, people do feel sometimes that logistics or supply chain is not something that you go and study in university. However, I have worked with many of my colleagues that studied in France, and there people do study supply chain as a subject at university. And working with these colleagues, I realized that they had a certain knowledge that I didn't. When I came out of university, they were ready to take a job with not much training. It wasn't my case. So after being in this work for many years, I decided to go back to university and to do a postgraduate in logistics and transport. So I started in logistics because I needed a job after I finished university, and because I finished university when the economy was not that good. The only job that I found that was taking recent graduates at the time was in merchandising. So in merchandising, I started in fashion, and I did planning and logistics because I started in a small company where they were a small company at the time. So you end up doing more than one thing. And then after that, I decided to wear to Arcadia, so fashion leading brand at the time. And then I went into food. So I worked for Jamie Oliver, and I work for Bestie Foods, who are a leading trading food company in this country. And now I'm in cosmetics. And so anyone working in supply chain do feel that you can change industry as long as you are passionate about what you do and you have an interest on learning about different supply chains. And it is possible. And I've done it. I encourage other people to do it as well.
It's an amazing journey. I mean, it's wonderful. I saw you the first merchandising one was with Charles Tirwitt, I believe. Was
yes.
it?
Yes.
This is Charles Tirwitt one. So I love the brand. I love the products. But it's amazing how you and then for me similar. You almost by accident fell into logistics, and then you grew to love it because there's so much complexity and so many interesting things. And I'm sure that working across different sectors, whether it's fashion or food or cosmetics, there's always something that there are lots of similarities, but there's lots of differences as well. So speaking of differences, speaking of cosmetics, so HCT is a business that actually sort of contract manufactures for a lot of leading cosmetics brands like Estée Lauder, L'Oreal, Lancome, as well as some of the indie and up and coming ones, and they all have most likely have very different approaches, requirements, setups, what makes them tick, what they require from you as a supplier. So can you talk a little bit about what are they required from you, and especially how their requirements differ depending on the size, whether it's a global mega brand versus an indie and a startup one?
Yes, very different. So yeah, as you said, we work with some of the big names that most people will recognize. But we also work with loads of the startups. So this new social media business that are doing extremely well. And I have to say that for us as a business, the social media brands are the ones that are driving our growth. So there are brands out there that probably you have never heard about, that they only sell on TikTok, or basically they don't even have an office. It's a business that it was started in someone's bedroom, and they are making millions. And sometimes it's very difficult to manage that growth. We have customers that have gone from zero to now have a valuation of £1 billion after 10 years. So as a supplier, of course, we have our challenges. With the big customers, we tend to work on forecasts. They have the data, they have the systems that can collect data from their stores, their online platforms. Now, if you're talking about a company that might have sometimes 1 to maybe 10 people, they don't have a system that can do that. Sometimes they only been in the market for less than a year or less than 5 years. They know, the good thing about social media is that they know there's a customer out there because they have loads of followers. So that gives them a big advantage sometimes. They are really good at moving to selling their product in other countries. This is not something that used to happen when I started working in retail, because the data was not there. So maybe you were very popular in the country where you were based, but you didn't know if your brand was going to work. If you're a UK brand, even nowadays, some of these retailers, the more traditional retailers, I mean, people that have mainly stores, and they don't have a strong social media presence, they are a bit worried about moving, for example, into Europe. Whereas I see that with social media brands, they can do that within this very small period of time, because they know that in Spain, France, Italy, they have loads of followers waiting for the product. So when we're now talking about small business, this small business can grow very, very fast. And they can go, as I say, from zero to making loads of millions. And for me, managing the supply chain of some of these brands, the challenge is that whereas with big business, yes, they give me a forecast. Sometimes they'll confirm how much they're going to buy for the next 12 months. With social media brands, it's not like that. So you can start with a new product development, and then you wait for the market to react once the product is launched. And then based on that, sometimes it's a bit difficult to predict what the demand is going to be. So now, how do we address issues like that? So what I think makes us different as a company is that, as you said, we are in many different countries. We have many teams working, around the world. And we can, first of all, source the product in different places. I think the company now is really focusing on having more capabilities in Europe. We have acquired some factories recently. We're planning to maybe even have more factories in the future. Because if you cannot predict demand, how you can make sure you can match supply to demand? This is the big question for us right now. So the only options we have right now are two main options. Either you buy components in advance that we do for some customers and you store them. So the customer might say, I don't want you to produce the finished product because I might not be able to sell it. However, for those components where the lead time is very long, I want you to buy those in advance. If the product sells well, they will go into the filling factory. We shorten lead times by several months. If the product doesn't do well, I might need to write it off. But what you prefer to write off? Components that maybe is like 1/5 of the full product cost, or the finished product. And this is something that these small businesses do really well, because I think we hear a lot in the news, not only for cosmetics, but for fashion companies, that they write off a lot of finished goods at the end of the year. So these companies are already telling us, we don't want to do that. And also, we don't want to have a lot of stock in our warehouse. Sometimes we don't have a warehouse, we have a garage. So you have to make sure that you cut down this lead time. So if the orders come through and demand goes up, you can react to this increase in demand. Obviously, the other option is you have to be very close to the customer. So lots of the brands now are saying, well, why don't you manufacture in Europe? Which I understand for some companies, this might come a bit of a surprise, because we always see Europe as an expensive place to do business when it comes to manufacturing. But it is happening, and we are doing it, and we see demand for these services. Because if you manufacture in Europe and if you sell in Europe and you are a brand that is growing really fast, this can give you advantages over your competitors, and it can make you more profitable.
Oh, it's amazing. This is very, very interesting. So it's not just the demands and requirements, is the completely different kind of speed or velocity of supply chain that the smaller indie brands work versus a bit more stable, a bit more rigid, a bit less flexible kind of established brands. I completely understand what you mean by a couple of TikToks go viral and then all of a sudden everybody wants something. I don't know, eyeliner or I don't know, particular shade of lipstick, and it's just like it flies off the shelf, and it needs to be. And you never, as you said, you never know. It might all of a sudden kick off in Nordic, or kick off in Iberia somewhere, and you are a UK company that you've not planned for them.
No. You can no longer predict demand. I mean, before, if you're just looking at the more traditional retailers where they have stores, they can more or less predict, the footprint in specific stores. But when you're online, it is, I have to say, impossible. So all you can do is to make sure that you have a supply chain that is strong and that can react to these changes in demand. Because otherwise, you're going to struggle to grow. So we see that big brands, they have a lot of focus on price, but social media brands, they have a lot of focus on speed. And that's not to say that obviously that for big brands, the speed is not important. But it is different, because a social media brand, they don't have a 5 years plan. Because in 5 years, they can go from Europe to the US to selling in China. I've got customers like that, or in 5 years period. So the big retailers, we have people in the high street that they've been, doing business for many years. As we can see, they do really well in the UK. They not do that well in other countries. They might have 1 or 2 or 3 stores abroad. But there you go. Someone that is doing business sometimes from their own home can do that. And I think this is how we, try to help our customers as well, that if you want to expand, we can help you with that expansion. So in terms of our supply chain capabilities, we know we do have warehouses in Europe. We have transport companies that can send your goods to different countries in Europe. So as well, if you're a smaller brand, you don't have to worry about taking the cost of employing people to manage the distribution of these goods to different countries you work in. You can rely on us. So again, this is sometimes when I always tell people, because I started in retail and now I work in manufacturing. So I've seen both sides, working for being customer and being a supplier. And even now, HCT is not only one factory. We've worked with many other factories that are not part of our group. So we are right in the middle, right? So we have the customers pushing us. We have to push our factories, our suppliers. I think I see that when you think about choosing people you're going to have a partnership with, always think about what extra service they can give you.
Yeah.
Because...
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Because, again, if you are a smaller company, your budgets are going to, be smaller. And always think about what can you outsource at not much extra cost instead of you taking that in-house.
Yes, and this is exactly the kind of the thought that what you were saying kind of got into my head in terms of, so you are not just in a traditional way contract manufacturer where a customer comes to you and says, well, can you make for me, I don't know, 10 tons of these products, and you just make it and say off you go. So you also provide the distribution capabilities, and all the way from kind of sourcing, storing, as you said, you can store ingredients and raw materials that may be reused for some other products or may be used for some other clients potentially, or there could be specific ones. But as you said earlier, they are much lower in cost if the demand doesn't materialize. So the write-offs are not that huge. But you also enable those brands to fulfill in other regions where they have no footprint.
Yeah.
So it could be a garage brand out of UK all of a sudden kicked off in, I don't know, Greece, and then you provide all of the with the delivery and fulfillment capabilities as well. Is it?
Yeah, so we provide them with, we don't deliver to the final customer, so to their final customer, but we can do everything else before that. So if they need, any warehousing services, we can help them with that. For, some customers, we only do the packaging. For other customers, we do the full product, as you see it in the stores. So instead of them relying on many different factories and having to chase all these individual factories, they can come to us and we can produce the final product and deliver that final product to a warehouse on a country that of their choice. And that is that what I think it makes it sometimes a bit different. But I have to say that this is the same principle I use when I try to choose people we partner with when it comes to, warehousing and logistics services in general. I always look for companies that have a global footprint, that they have excess capacity, or even if they don't have it now, that they have the resources to find that excess capacity. And obviously now lately as well, companies that have AI tools that can help us. Because even as a big company, we cannot upgrade all our systems in one go. But I can see that some of especially logistics companies nowadays are releasing loads of AI tools into the market, especially this year. And I do feel that will also help our operation and give a better customer service to our clients.
You are listening to Chain Reaction. This podcast is brought to you by Phlox, the leading marketplace for the supply chain and logistics industry. Visit phlox.is to find out how you find the perfect supplier or make your services available to prospective buyers. Thanks for tuning in. Now back to the show.
In terms of the complexity and the complexity and the scale of what you've discussed will be unmanageable without the technology, without the presence of kind of proper technologies, whether it's AI or AI is one of the components. Obviously, you need to have clarity and visibility and transparency, and then you need to have a degree of cleanliness of the data, because so many errors that so many companies have. You mentioned before we started the recording, you mentioned that there's lots of younger startups. They actually have very little or very poor data. They could be working on Excel spreadsheets, which is very, very difficult to then absorb. So technology is becoming very important. So can you tell me a little bit more, perhaps, is what are the kind of the biggest issues, the biggest challenges that you see in terms of either implementation of technologies or technological abilities or interconnectedness?
So in terms of technology, I think lots of people think that AI has already the capacity to change everything and to do everything. I haven't seen that personally. Maybe I am wrong. I think like lots of other my colleagues in the work in supply chain, we all try to figure out what will be good for our business, and what kind of technology is worth investing in. Because I also feel that some of the things out there might be a bit more advanced than what we currently have now, but maybe because of the high cost, is something that we have to rethink. I seen that a few new AI tools, that some of our partners have released recently, especially in the logistics sector. I think to a certain point, some of these AI tools will put more pressure on us. And I was talking to my team about that this week. Because just to give you an example, transport companies are telling me, yes, now our system can chase your suppliers. Obviously, this system can send several emails out per second. And they can be set up in a way that, if you don't reply, they will send you another email tomorrow and then another email. And then the systems will be able to track how good you are replying and if things were on time or not on time. And I do think that if I'm thinking about how I manage a relationship with our suppliers, I'm thinking, oh, that is great, but we are a supplier. So what that means is that these systems are going to be chasing us. So if a company, we don't also have a system that helps us chase our suppliers, then we're going to have an issue. Because I'm going to have a team that is going to have loads of emails coming through and no one to reply to these emails. And the other issue is that, taking the same example, if you have a customer, so for example, if you are end consumer, you might spend £50, £100, and you get an email from the company you purchase from, say, this item is late, and it happens a lot. The new delivery date is in 3 days' time. You might not be happy, but it's expected, let's say. But we've got customers that maybe an order is £1 million. I cannot send an automated email that says the order is going to be late. And the system is not there yet where you can think, oh, it's late, but what solutions can we provide to this customer? This is something done by us. So I do think that obviously the systems are very good at doing repetitive tasks and chasing you. But what about when you have to answer back? That takes time. You have to do your research. You have to prepare emails with a lot of information. To our customers, we have to say what has happened, how we're going to limit the impacts, what we're going to do in terms, with the production line to cut down the lead times. And so I just thinking that there are lots of things that are good, but I also see potential issues.
Right.
No,
of course, I completely understand what you mean. What you mean is, technology on one hand almost goes kind of in front of kind of the human perceptions. And yes, we're building, and in our platform as well, we have lots of communication automations, and you can start sending emails, WhatsApp messages, text messages, kind of reminding people of the urgent things. But it's an intelligence, as you described. It's an intelligence that is important to distinguish between a routine update versus a problem that needs to be highlighted, that requires either special resolution or special attention, at least. And who do you communicate it to? This is absolutely critical and important. And I think the other thing that we talked about, which was also amazing, was all of that is also connected to kind of the elements of the sustainability, especially like the indie brands, when they're quite interested quite a lot in terms of, sustainable packaging and so forth. But because of the, data or lacking data or demands that could be requiring air freight for their products, which almost like, which as a solution to a particular problem of delay, and that has a knock-on effect on kind of the fundamental kind of sustainability challenges. So the right use of technology is absolutely critical. So, but what are the kind of the biggest challenges, the biggest problems that you see at the moment? Would that be with kind of building the agility for your organization and focusing on more not sustainable as in more steady work with the big existing clients, or they actually the younger indie brands when you mentioned that they are the ones to deliver growth?
Yeah, they are the ones that deliver growth. Yeah, that's right. For us, I'm talking about our company. But I think everyone can see it, especially TikTok brands are doing really well. And some of these brands, you don't see them on the high street, but they are making millions. I think we trying to support these brands in different ways. But of course, we cannot fully change our supply chain, in a short period of time. And this is why I was saying that, we can provide solutions in terms of safety stock, again, trying to manufacture more in Europe. But generally speaking, as you can see, lots of brands are manufacturing in China.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you were to create a sustainable product in China, then because of the changes in market demand, and because also sometimes it's not even in some cases, I've got customers that are doing really well and that they are in a period of growth, but they're already a medium-sized company, let's say. So not the top players, but they already had a few years in the market. They know what they're doing. But because of the current economic situation around the world, they don't really want to commit to big quantities. So basically, they place loads of small orders throughout the year, sometimes non-stop. And when I tell them, and I try to say to them, look, sometimes it's even cheaper for you if you place a big order together. And it'll be much better. The factory will be, we have like a dedicated line for you. And I try to, tell them about all the advantages. They don't want to do it because they are worried about basically end up with lots of stock. And when we read the newspapers, there are obviously loads of news about, there's apparently less demand as well. When we look at China, there's less product coming into Europe, into the US, because the economy has slowed down globally. Obviously, then we have the tariff war between China and the US. And that means, again, that we have to react to these changes very quickly. But at the same time, the customers are being very, very cautious. And that means that we end up, using this air freight shipments to sometimes deal with these changes in demand. But then if you have a sustainable product, and then you air freight the sustainable product, then the question in the future is going to be, can you really say this is a sustainable product? And this is something that I think that there will probably be more regulation in the coming years. We import into Spain, for example, they already asking us to provide a lot more extra documentation if I compare to UK, France, or Italy. And I do think that that's in preparation for probably, more legislation in the coming years. I think France as well, there's lots of talks about, anything to do with especially, recycling plastic. So I think things like that as well are going to change the way we manage our supply chains and we make them more efficient.
So it's it does sound like the management element is as one of the biggest, both the issues as well as levers that will allow businesses to improve. So it's a bit more effective demand forecasting and demand planning. And I completely understand the challenges of a smaller brands. You just don't know when all of a sudden the viral campaign is going to hit, and then you have tons of sales which can drop off fairly quickly as well. So that's a massive challenge. And it sounds like the technology is probably one of the technology that enables and supports the supply chain management can allow for this kind of resilience. Which it will enable the speed of communication, the extracting of the prioritization of the issues that needed more urgent attention versus something that you can put the base volume on the boat, but some of the items need to be need to be done urgently or need to be shipped urgently. So this is this is a very, very interesting subject, and it's a very interesting, and I can imagine that this is very contrasting to more stable and more established businesses that have lots of presence over the decades, so their volumes are more or less steady. So, do you see any volatility in more established brands like Lancôme, L'Oréal, Estée Lauder, or they are more or less stable? So it's much easier to forecast and much easier to optimize the supply chain for its kind of cost and smooth out the peaks.
I think they can, of course, forecast better because they have more data. But I think there's a lot of competition, and whereas some of the big brands are sometimes struggling, other brands that are new in the market, they're doing really well. So nowadays, being well established, being big, doesn't mean anything. You have to, it really doesn't. If I take the example, because I said I work for Arcadia. When I worked for Arcadia, they were the biggest fashion company in the UK. And when I was working there, of course, we were talking about already selling online. We had many meetings about this. And the answer from senior management was always, it's too expensive. It's better to sell in stores. Online, it's just a trend. It will pass. It's not going to take off. And now Arcadia doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And they were the biggest. I think at one point they probably even owned 50% of the UK high street, right? So we have to think, if that can happen to a brand like Arcadia, and we've seen many other big retailers that had to close down, that can happen to any brand. And again, that doesn't mean that people cannot do business, because again, I have very small clients that are doing extremely well. But that means that you can no longer think that because you are well established, you don't have to work on being more efficient, work on costs, working on implementing AI, whatever it might be. You still have to try to work every day to keep your status, really.
Yeah, and ability to recognize trends and being able to react in time to them are absolutely paramount. So thanks very much, Natalia, for coming on a podcast. I'd like to finish our episodes on one question that I like asking the colleagues. So imagine you have a magic wand and you can change one thing in supply chain, just one. What would it be?
One thing in supply chain.
Well, in terms of kind of your setup, your business, your technologies, anything. So if you can change anything in your kind of the business and your environment, what would it be?
I think there's still a lot of improvements to be done in terms of how we work with people in our network in general. And I do think that whereas before you had a brand and you were trying to protect your brand and you didn't want anyone to know, what you were doing, and because that made you different and you were always competing. I already see that some companies, they work very close with their competitors. And I know this sounds crazy, probably for lots of business, but I do think that collaboration is something that will help us to be stronger in the future. I see, for example, like factories that have limited capacity going to another factory that has the capacity to do the product. And I just think that there's a lot of conversations now happening between different brands. And I do hope that that's something that we can keep going, because by not sharing information will not make us stronger, really. So I do feel like a stronger supply chain in the future will be based on people sharing knowledge and doing, things like this, where we can talk about the challenges we are facing.
Perfect. Well, I 100% agree, and this is what our kind of ambition and the target is. And I think on that beautiful note, I would like to thank you again for coming to the podcast. Thanks very much, and hope we'll speak in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Chain Reaction. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have a story or insights to share from your sector, we'd love to hear from you. Simply reach out to us through the links in the description. See you next time.